You're listening to ChainLeak, the crypto news podcast with your host, Joshua Roomsberg. Follow and subscribe today.
Welcome to the ChainLeak podcast. I'm your host, Joshua Roomsberg. Today's episode is about decentralized data on demand. Today's guest, James Bailey. Welcome to the show, brother.
Thanks, Joshua. Thanks for having me.
All right, so you are the COO of SubQuery Network. Could you give us a quick introduction to SubQuery and what you guys are doing for the industry?
Yeah, absolutely, Joshua. It's great to be here. So SubQuery, let's dive into it. Let's make it short because there's a lot to talk about today. SubQuery is a major infrastructure provider to other developers in the Web3 ecosystem. Essentially, we are a team that many don't hear about, but behind the scenes of your favorite applications, behind your favorite DeFi apps or NFT marketplaces or bridges or wallets, we provide infrastructure, we provide services, we provide tooling for them so that they can build and deploy and scale, and they operate as normal, right? We're behind the scenes. It's like picks and shovels, but we do a lot of work in data, making data available, making it more easier to access. RPCs, which are how you communicate with the blockchain.
Yeah.
And we're doing a bit more stuff these days around AI as well.
Okay, now, would you say the project is more geared towards developers or end users behind the scene?
That's correct, but I think every developer is absolutely geared towards developers. Our main customers are developers, but I think it's important that people that aren't developers still understand the importance of these companies that behind the scenes power a lot of things. So, for example, Microsoft is one of the most valuable companies in the world, and yes, they have consumer products, but most of their revenue comes from behind the scenes stuff that they sell to other businesses building stuff, right?
Yeah.
So the biggest companies in the world do infrastructure. Amazon is another example where they have a consumer business, but half of their revenue comes from their cloud computing business.
Right. Now I get that. So for an end user who may not be familiar with the project, what are some of the application uses to where they might not notice they are using SubQuery, but they may be using it in the background without even realizing?
Yeah, every different vertical we support. So we do work with wallets, with NFTs, with DeFi applications, with bridges, with if you're doing basically anytime you need data. The way that the blockchain is organized, and this is somewhat technical, but I'll try to keep it simple. Blockchain data is organized in a really terrible way. Essentially, a blockchain is a list of blocks. And if you want to visualize a book, for example, a book has, each page has some text on it. And if you wanted to say, tell me the last 10 pages that Harry Potter appeared on this book, you would have to kind of go back individually and look at each page.
Read each page,
Yeah. It's the same thing for blockchain. A blockchain, every block has its own bit of information, like a page. And to ask the question, like, give me the last 10 transactions I've made so I can show it in my wallet, which is very simple, right? That's like basic kind of a UI that you would expect. You have to go to blockchains and go block by block to see if there's a transaction in that block that you interacted with. Now, the whole point about data and what we do at SubQuery is we make that data more available. And how we do that is we take off that data from the blockchain and we convert it to a format that makes it very easy to kind of ask questions like the last 10 transactions that I've made, and then provide that to applications, whatever they use that for, whatever you want to use it for.
So for me as a consumer, if I'm looking at one of my wallet providers and they use a specific blockchain explorer, you guys could tie into that blockchain explorer and supply that information behind the scenes?
We kind of replace that blockchain explorer. We provide the data that the blockchain explorer provides in a faster way.
Okay, that's
so
even better.
Blockchain explorer is a nice user interface on top of what we do. They do the same thing as we do, but they focus on building the user interface, a nice, easy way to move around. We just focus on the raw data underneath the hood.
Okay, so is it on the application developers to give the end user a better interface?
Essentially, for the end user, if the application works well, if it's fast, if it's easy to use, it means that they and we have done our job correctly. They
Okay.
should not notice that we're there. That's the idea, right? The whole point of what we do is trying to make it so that when you use a Web3 application, when you use a new decentralized application, it's as fast, it's as easy to use, it's clean, it's like it provides all the information you need, and it feels like a Web2 application. You don't notice that you're it's not slow and clunky and crap.
Now, when it comes to this data indexing, how do you get the decentralized aspect?
So to run these indexes, we call them indexes, which are the process of scanning a blockchain and taking off information.
Yeah.
We have to run them somewhere, right? And the whole point of Web3 is to avoid running one of these so that one of them can be changed or broken or can be malicious, right? And so we've built a network where anyone can run these and they can contribute their information back into the kind of hive mind. And the point here is that you have no single point of failure and you have no single point where someone can be malicious and provide fake information for you. For example, if you log into your application, Joshua, and I want to be malicious, I could provide some fake information about someone making transactions that would scare the crap out of you, or maybe
Yeah.
I help you to encourage you to do something that you don't want to do. Okay?
Sign into an application or
exactly,
yeah.
or oh crap, Josh, I accidentally sent you, $1,000 worth. Can you please send it back? And you log in, you see, oh yeah, see, you sent me $1,000, worth, so I'll send it back. It makes sense, even though the information is fake. I can fake that. So by decentralizing it, you decrease the risk that will happen, and we have built a decentralized network that provides that.
Now, do people run nodes on the network? Is that what it is?
Correct. Yeah, so people that are more technical run nodes, and they run indexes, index data, and save that and then provide that back, and they get rewarded for doing so. But more kind of consumers could also join the network and act as delegators, and they can delegate their tokens and support their favorite node operators, people that run the nodes, and in return, they can get a cut of the rewards or portion of the rewards they receive.
What are the requirements for running a node?
It's somewhat technical, but it's still very easy. So if you've run a validator before, or
Yep.
if you've done mining before, it's very straightforward. But you will
Okay.
need to know how to set up computers and stuff and run them quite well and efficiently.
Do you think, or do you recommend people run the nodes in virtual servers or on their own hardware in their homes or in their businesses?
It's a great question. We don't, and we intentionally don't dictate or suggest anything there. Now,
Okay.
we like to think that the market will make them sense here. So, for example, someone may decide to run in a cloud provider on a virtual machine for efficiency and ease of use, right? It's easy to set up. I can get it done in a few minutes. But you might be completely on a different cost basis. It's a lot more expensive to do that than running it in a hardware in your bedroom, for example.
Right.
You get cheap hardware in your bedroom, and you also get free heating at night in winter. So why wouldn't you do that? So we don't dictate that. We let the market decide. And we find when we asked node operators where they run, I think there's a slightly more that run on their own hardware versus running it with a cloud provider or a cheap cloud provider.
Are there any vulnerabilities between the two?
Well, if everyone, so this has happened before in some networks, for example. One
Okay.
example was there was a cloud provider in Europe called Hertzner, and they were very cheap. And the reason why is because they didn't charge for the amount of data exiting their service. And for blockchain infrastructure, there's a lot of data going back and forth. And as a result, they realized, oh, shit, we don't want to have these blockchain nodes running. Everyone that's running a blockchain node, you must leave us. And suddenly, half of the validators on a few networks had to move away.
Wow.
And, there was also issues in the past where there's some networks that are quite European focused. And AWS, Amazon Web Services, in Frankfurt in Germany had I think about 40% of the computing power in that one data center. So if that data center went offline, 40% of the nodes would go offline. So there has been some issues of centralization in the past, and that's the reason why we don't dictate this, is because we don't want to have anyone saying, oh, we'll go there where everyone else is, because that causes issues.
That was a conversation I had with my last guest, was we discussed the vulnerabilities of being centralized on these different virtual servers. And I mentioned that a variety of different projects over the last 8 years have recommended that their users go to the same server farms,
Not
and
smart.
you have all of these different nodes running on them server farms, and it makes it more centralized.
Exactly so. I think they do that for reasons of performance. If everyone's running the same server farm, it can feel like it's a lot faster because they're just talking across the room at each other, right? They're not talking across
Yeah.
the world. There's obviously short-term gains there where you can say, look how fast the block rate of our network is to the consumers, but it's all bullshit, you know? It doesn't really mean anything. But it's a vanity metric, as they say.
Now, when it comes to SubQuery's open source network, what are some of the advantages that you guys provide in comparison to some of your competitors?
We're focused on providing a kind of a broad infrastructure product. So our indexes and everything is open source. That's like non-negotiable. I think in Web3, I think if there's any project that is building Web3 and they're not open source, you run. Okay, don't. It's gonna be a bad time. It's probably going to end up being a rug pull at some point in the future. It's just not a good look. Web3 is all about decentralization, and with that comes openness, and with that comes open source. Our network is open source, which means anyone can see how it works. Anyone could copy it, for example, if they wanted to. But it's a bit more transparent in what we do. Now, we try to be faster than our competitors, or better than our competitors, by being faster, by providing more features, being easier to use. And basically, we've also done a lot of focus on adding support for more chains. So one example that we've looked at recently is the more chains aspect, right? You see, and the kind of the theme around Web3 right now is an explosion of new layer 2s, right? Every new week there's a new layer 2 launching. It's the hot thing right now. In the past, it was new Cosmos zones, and previously before that was new Polkadot parachains. But every one of those new layer 2s is coming to us and saying, hey, we need developer tooling. We need infrastructure. We need all this basic stuff like wallets, block explorers, indexes, RPCs. And we are one of those. So we do a lot of work with very early stage networks to provide basic developer tooling to help them build their ecosystem of developers, and therefore to help them build a ecosystem of consumers.
Okay. Now, to zero in on the open source aspect, for an end user or for a developer, what are the advantages there from being open sourced versus privatized?
From a developer perspective, open source means you can look into their code and you can see if they're doing anything naughty.
Okay.
You can see if they're saving information they shouldn't be saving, or if they're sending information off to some foreign server that they shouldn't be sending it to.
So it makes it more trustworthy to the developers.
Exactly, right? And we say in Web3, don't trust, verify.
Yep.
Okay. Now, propriety, that's a very Web2 way. It's a good way to save your money and to be more of a lock-in for vendors. But it's not the approach for Web3. And so that kind of goes back to my point. Just don't mess around with proprietary Web3 products.
For a developer, if they wanted to implement SubQuery, what would be the process and how would they get the data on demand?
Basically, we provide a bunch of walkthroughs to help them with this. But essentially, all they do is they download a blank SubQuery project, and they say to that project, I want to index these smart contracts. Okay. I want to index when they do this, and I want to save it into this format. And then SubQuery will do the rest. And it will index information, or you'll run it, and it'll run against a chain. It'll collect the information. It will do that, look for those particular contracts. It will save in the format that you defined. And you will get that data set in the end that you can use when you're building your front end. It's very easy. We made it as simple as possible.
That sounds so crazy. It sounds like input you would use on ChatGPT. Is that similar to the concept?
One day we'll get there, maybe even, I don't think it's that far in advance that we can say to ChatGPT or some other AI as well to say, hey, I have this new contract on chain and I want to get this information about it in this format, and it will spit a SubQuery project out for you, no doubt.
See, that sounds crazy. Now, the way you mentioned a developer would input specific values to collect data on, is the concept of that similar to prompts that you would use in GPT?
For now, it's more just defining. Smart contracts will have a certain like ID on the chain.
Okay.
For now, it's just defining that. But we are working on an AI product as well at the moment, and we can talk about that slightly separate, which is the decentralized network we run does do a lot of data indexing, but also runs RPCs. Now, RPCs are, for those that don't understand, they're the main way that your application saves information to the blockchain.
Yeah.
So if you're on a wallet app on my phone can't run a blockchain node on my phone. It's too big. It doesn't work.
Yep.
Okay. You can't run a blockchain node on the Chrome extension in your browser. Little fox icon, that's not a blockchain node. That's talking to another blockchain node. So all these applications, they talk to a computer somewhere else that has a blockchain node running with it, and it's a big computer.
To circle back, for a developer who wants to input a set of keywords or values to collect the data, what does that look like from a user interface perspective? I'm trying to understand where you're going with that. For a developer, would they type in specific coding, like how you code lines in a website? Is it like that? Or is it like a Chat GPT prompt to where you say 2 or 3 sentences and it spits out a result? What does that look like from a user interface perspective?
Yeah, let's try to visualize what an application would look like on a blockchain application. So let's say we're talking about a wallet. A simple wallet runs on your phone, runs on your browser, a little like fox icon that a lot of people have maybe, for example. So SubQuery is providing the data already of the transactions that you have. We've talked about getting the transaction list, like reading a book. We've talked about that. Now, but let's say we want to make a transaction. I want to send you some ETH, Joshua. I want to send you some ETH. I go into this application. I say, Joshua's address is this. Send 2 ETH to Josh. What happens then? So behind the scenes, your app needs to talk to the blockchain. It needs to save to the blockchain and say, hey, I'm about to send this 2 ETH to Joshua. But the problem is mobile phones, browser extensions, other kind of apps, they can't run a blockchain node. Blockchain nodes are quite large. They can't run on your phone. They can't run on your browser. So they need to talk to another computer that is running a blockchain node. And these computers are what we call RPCs, remote procedure call computers. And it's a very technical term, but it's very simple, okay? These computers run big, expensive, ugly blockchain nodes. And they listen to the world, and anyone in the world can send them a transaction. I can send my closest RPC. It's like a post office. I can send the post office saying, I've signed and I've approved that I want to send Josh 2 ETH. Okay, and the post office or the RPC will save that and do that and manage that for me. Okay, so SubQuery also supports RPCs. We provide a decentralized network where anyone around the world, wherever you are, I'm currently in Berlin, so there might be a few around here in Berlin, can run an RPC in their home, in their bedroom, keeping themselves warm in winter, and offer that RPC as a post office to the network. Okay. And
so you guys create the RPCs, or that's something the developers would do?
The developers do. The developers run them. We just create the software that connects them to you. We create the software that allows you and his address, like you building an application to find them and submit stuff to them, and for them to get rewarded for doing that. Okay. We build the connection. We build like the social media here for this.
That was an incredible breakdown, because I've been in the industry close to 10 years now, and I've used multiple RPCs, and I've seen some networks have 4 or 5 different ones you can choose inside of a wallet, but I never understood that back end. And now that you explain that, I have a better understanding of how that works. The post office, that was brilliant. Great job with that.
Well, the thing about the RPCs is RPCs are actually some of the biggest businesses out there behind exchanges. some of the RPC companies you might have heard of are huge. And the problem, Joshua, that we oppose with RPCs right now is because there's only like 5 or 6 across the network. Maybe the top one has half the traffic.
Yeah.
That top one sees, let's say, half of all transactions across that network. Now, I send, let's say I'm a big whale, okay? And I am about to send a transaction to Uniswap to buy a crap load of your favorite new meme coin, okay? Now, that RPC can see that. They receive that, the post office are sorting that out, and they go, oh, crap, this guy's about to completely, buy the entire supply of this meme coin. They could technically put in their own buy order before that because they know the price is about to go sky high. Okay, that's called what we call front running. Okay. Front running is that the ability for a centralized or a person of authority to insert their own thing in before yours.
Yep.
Exactly. And so this is an example of something that the RPCs could do.
I guess what I'm trying to understand is SubQuery does like a spider web with transaction data and would spread that across multiple RPCs.
Correct.
Instead of having the ability to front run, you might have the opportunity to be one of the first to go through because it potentially went to a smaller RPC.
And that small RPC probably doesn't have the technical capacity to go and front run because they're not a $1 million company kind of investing in this kind of software. They're just some guy at home that's running an RPC on their keeping their bedroom warm at winter.
Okay, that sounds real cool. Now, let's transition into the AI aspect. How are you guys going to implement AI, and how does AI play a factor in the next generation of SubQuery?
Yeah, so as I'm sure you're aware, AI is something that's taken the world by storm. I think you have to be living under a rock not to know that right now.
Right.
But AI is certainly a big kind of growth right now. Now, I think we've all been amazed in the last year of how good large language models like ChatGPT are. Okay, they're incredible. I don't know if you've used them yourself, but I often use them.
Yeah, no, I use AI every single day.
Yeah, I know. Like it just speeds up your proficient, your productivity basically.
Yeah.
Now the problem with AI right now, and AI is kind of like the previous world problem on steroids, is that there are 2 companies that kind of control the market right now.
Centralization on that aspect
There's
as well.
OpenAI and there's Google. Like those 2 basically have like 80% of the entire market share. And I know that I've sent some somewhat private stuff to ChatGPT to kind of help me to summarize something. You probably done the same. Like, that joke where you're like, if I die, delete my internet browsing history.
Right.
I think we should add on to that, like, delete my ChatGPT.
AI, yeah,
Please,
right.
So is this not a massive issue that there's only 2 companies, not more, that have all your information and chat and LLMs, and they are using those prompts that you send them, the questions you send them, to better train their own private models and not share that with the world, right?
On top of how you train your own AI model, like I pay attention to when I tell my AI to remember this or remember that or remember this style of writing or remember how I like things summarized in bullet point format and all these different directions that you send your AI model. It trains it for you, but it also sends that data to
Everyone
who
else.
knows where it goes, right?
Yeah.
And they can train other things based off the data you're providing and training that with. And I think about that all the time. Like, man, I've spent multiple hours training my AI models to where they are perfected for exactly what I need to help with my productivity. But I've also given them the key to all of the ideas I've had for building this out. And
Exactly.
I think the decentralized aspect will be huge over the next 5 to 10 years.
And I agree. I think like we should stop kind of giving away free crap to big internet companies that don't give it back to us.
Right. Yeah.
Like we saw this with social media, previously, right? But social media at least has like, a bit more variety out there. Anyway, so we are well aware of this, but there is an open source option for AI. There are some open source models out there that are very good. They're almost as good as ChatGPT. They're almost as good as Gemini. Okay, they're very good. And we know that there are a bunch of open source models where that value is a bit more yours, right? It's not being used to improve someone else's AI as well. And so we want to help those by building a decentralized hosting feature or functionality for AI. Now, the reason why is you have training. Training is the act of telling an AI or teaching an AI how to learn and how to do stuff, right? It's like
Yep.
taking this kid from birth to like
Infancy up to, yep.
it's taking them up to like intermediate school or high school.
Yep.
Now, once you have that kid in high school, let's put him in a box and let's ask him questions, right? Because he's now ready to give us answers, right? That's what.
Right.
And this is called, so you're training, and now this is called inference. Inference is we've got a trained kid. He's now grown up. Let's put him in a box. Let's ask him some questions. And that's a terrible analogy, but I'm sure you can understand, right?
Yeah, no, I get it. That's
It's put him
perfect.
to work, you know?
Yeah.
So we are providing a decentralized alternative to hosting these inference, these workloads, where you can take your existing AI and you can ask it questions. And that means you could train your amazingly personal AI and you could put it on our network once you've done that, and you can forever there have a model that is entirely focused for you and only available for you to use.
Wow.
And you can ask it questions. Okay. So we're working on that right now. We put a demo out online, and we're just kind of working through our roadmap. But that's kind of what we're trying to build.
That would be the coolest thing ever, to have a personalized AI that is only specific to you, to where nobody else is collecting that data, nobody else is taking your training model. That's the point where we need to get with AI in general, I feel like, because there's been times where I have had general queries that I didn't want to send to the AI model. Either I didn't want them selling that information, I didn't want them taking that and training the model based off what I was going to ask it. So I've held back. I've had my reserves on asking specific queries. You're saying with an open source, decentralized model, you could have it personalized?
You could have it personalized, and again, you can't promise that no node operator is going to store those. But if you're distributing all those kind of personal things across all these different nodes, no one of them has a big global picture of you, right? Like OpenAI has a fantastic image of what you think about and how you think, Joshua, and what your curiosities and like what you're like, what you might want to buy on the internet. They could sell that to an advertising company, right?
Yep.
Okay, it's like your search history. But if you
Speaking of advertising, this happened to me tonight, blew my mind. I was in the house talking to my wife, and we said something about Target. And 20 minutes later, I was sitting in my car and I got an ad for Target. And I'm like, man, we was just talking about it. How does that happen? But that's what it is. They're selling your data to where these advertisers can hit you.
And they'll pay a lot of money for it, of course, because they know how effective it is. So we're trying to distribute all these things to different people. So no one person has a global picture of your taste, your preferences, your personality, what makes you uniquely you, Joshua. And that's kind of what we're trying to avoid here, is where that happens. And right now, in our current world, unfortunately, there are a couple of big internet companies that do damn well know what makes you you.
Okay, so when you dive deep into SubQuery AI, what would be the generalization of that for an end user to understand?
Essentially, we're trying to provide a way that end users or that developers can build intelligent applications. Okay, so they could build a personalized ChatGPT app or similar, that where you can set it up, you can provide all your history, and it only provides your AI. It's your unique, separate AI. Or, for example, your favorite wallet app. You have a assistant in there that you can ask a question like, I've got these weird tokens here. Like, tell me about these tokens. Where can I use them? How do I convert them from X? What's the most efficient bridge, for example? And it would go off and figure that out and provide it to you, rather than you have to research and do your own research, which again, like, it's important, but it just takes time, Or, for example, you have an NFT marketplace and you say, I like this artist. This artist is pretty cool. Can you can you go off and find if there's any other NFTs similar to this or like in the same style that are coming out soon,
Now, would that be something a wallet developer would have to implement? And would that data be stored on the query network?
That would be correct, yeah. So the wallet developer would build those kind of and train those AIs, but we would provide them the ability to host that, to run those
On the back end.
on the back end, exactly. So we'll help them build them, we'll help them test them, but we'll help them run it, and they'll run it in a way that if millions of people are running this wallet and asking these questions, it scales, it scales to answer all those questions.
What do you feel is the largest scalability you guys could handle at this moment? If a wallet provider had 100,000 users or 1 million users per month, what's the number in there where you think starting out you guys could manage?
We're very comfortable hitting something like we've previously done stress testing of around 300 or 400 million queries per day.
Wow.
So that's like, I think it's like 5 a second or something, or like 6 or 7 a second. I don't know. I can't remember exactly the amount. But again, the point is this is a network, right? So we've got a network right now is of this size. But if there's an increase in the amount of traffic in the network, if the demand increases, the supply will increase, right? More node operators around the world will realize that, that idle computer I could be running these workloads on, and I could get money for it, I get tokens for it. You can expect the supply will increase. So I personally don't believe capacity is an issue. I think there's a lot of spare capacity out there, a lot of spare computers running around the world.
If you break that down, you mentioned you guys stress test the network at 500 million. If you had 1 million users on the network, what's that? 500? 5 a day or 500?
Yeah. 500. So 500 questions a day. You're right.
Okay. Yeah. No, I was trying to get at that because I'm thinking most people are not going to ask 500 questions. They don't even do that to a chat GPT.
No way.
So if a developer could implement something like this on a standardized model, they have the opportunity for their users to ask 500 questions a day. Now, on the pricing side, what does that look like for a developer's fees to access that many transactions?
So essentially, we will make it so it's a market cost or market system, right? Capitalism. So the people running the models will have to figure out, this is costing me this amount of money, and this server can kind of handle this much load. I'm going to put my price at this rate. And the way that you price in AI is you essentially price by, they call them tokens, but they're basically like words. So every input and output word. So if you write a massive essay into the AI and you click summarize this, it will cost quite
every
a bit.
Word's going to take one out of your allowance.
Yep. So we're going to make pricing that same approach. That's how it works in Web 2. So if you pay open a ChatGPT a paid plan, that's how you pay for it. We'll be doing the same for our network because it makes sense. It makes sense to the same style. So developers are familiar with it.
You guys mentioned that you are looking into working with a variety of different networks. What does that blockchain interoperability look like when it comes to SubQuery?
Yeah, it's a very important thing for us. So we have prided ourselves. We've been very proud of our achievements in supporting as many different blockchain networks as possible. And at the moment, we support 210 different blockchain networks across EVM, Cosmos, Polkadot, Algorand, Near, even Stellar as well.
Okay.
We've been very active in going out to these new networks and adding support because we know you might have a favorite network. Someone else might have a favorite network, but we know that developers are building in different places. And we know that consumers expect the same user experience. They want to see the same applications. They want to see the same tools and services in these different networks. Like you don't want to have to go, let's say you find this new cool network that you like. You don't have to go there and relearn what's the wallet, what's the bridge, like what are the names of all these different things, right? It's like, it's too much information, it's too much overhead.
That's the thing I've noticed over the last 2 years is with the evolution of layer 2s and all of these different networks that are running on the Ethereum backend to where the wallet addresses are the same. You just have to change which network you're connected to. That's been a ease of use case for end users to where the interoperability between layer 2s that are EVM compatible
Yeah,
makes using blockchain
much easier.
user-centric, and
Yeah.
easier to use.
And I think that makes sense. So we do a lot of work because we support all these networks. It means those tools that you use, like the wallets or the bridges or the dexes, they can use they can use SubQuery to power themselves on all these different new networks. We work across them all. But you mentioned something interesting, and I'm very passionate about this, which is that you just switch a network and you change a network and it works. And I think, yes, it's not a bad user experience, but I think that's still a terrible user experience. I don't
Okay.
hate the idea that you have to, when you go to a new network, so let's say you go from Ethereum to Polygon to Base, you have to go up to the top right and you have to click switch to Polygon,
Switch every
switch
single
to
time.
Base.
Right. Yeah.
I think having to make people change the context of what they're looking at, change the window to the world every time they switch a network is not the future. I think it means it encourages all these networks to be like their own islands in the sea. Okay. And one thing that we're doing a lot of work on is multi-chain indexing. And that means combining information from all the chains into one data set. Okay. So when you go to a UI, you don't have a switch. You just see all your assets across all the different networks, all there. Okay. You can see them all in one list. You don't have to like switch between and like change like what books you're looking at, like it should just be in one place. And that's something that we're trying to work on and encourage.
Yeah, no, I think about that like from a end user experience. I think about having to change, and sometimes I'll send a transaction to a specific network, and if I'm not changed to that network, I keep refreshing like, man, where is
Where is
this
it?
money
Yeah.
at? Right.
And
And then you think about it, okay, I forgot to change. So
think of all the time that like our lives have been shortened thanks to the anxiety
I
that we have.
wasted 2 minutes refreshing this
I
damn thing
know.
and nothing was happening.
All the
Right.
gray hairs we have now because of this anxiety of like, where the hell are my tokens?
Right. So for new users to the industry that might not even understand that you have to change networks, they're probably thinking about it the same way you just explained. I'm expecting to come into a wallet. All of my assets are listed. They should be interchangeable to where I don't have to click a bunch of shit. And that's the problem people are running into is you have to change networks. You have to add different RPCs. There's a lot of different things that are still stopping the average user from adopting this technology full time.
There's still these friction points, we call them.
Yep.
Friction points are just little like things that make things a little bit harder than they need to be.
Man. So for developer toolkits to build on SubQuery, where can they go to learn more about how to implement your network?
Easiest way is to go to our website, subquery.network. And from there, you'll see links to our documentation. You'll see links to quick start guides, basically just walkthroughs to make it really easy to you.
Do you guys have explainer videos as well for the developers?
Now, we do a lot of work with we do a lot of work and do like explainer videos and workshops and guided kind of development examples. We spend far too much time on documentation. It's a thankless task. And we do a lot of work as well with ecosystems. So, for example, we will help the ecosystem publish docs into their own documentation. So, for example, if you go to like Base's docs, you'll see entries and guides around SubQuery and Base's doc because they want to help people build on their network as well.
Right, so, yeah, that's cool.
Education's a big thing for us.
Now, for people who would like to join your community and start to learn more about the network, where can they go to learn more information?
Yeah, same place. Subquery.network would be good, I think. I think it's a good entry point, and you'll see everything there. We've just updated our website. It should provide a good example of like how to use a network and what is. And you can go, of course, to the network. It's very easy once you're there, and you can delegate. You can check it out. You can see the traffic. You can see real node operators working away, and you can participate as a delegator if you want to.
Could you tell the people your Twitter and Telegram for the project as well?
You can find us on Twitter. SubQuery Network is the handle, and of course Telegram. I think it's quite similar. The easiest way though is to go to the bottom of our website, and at the bottom there'll be all the links to social media. Now, if you're more consumer or retail, you'll like to be on Twitter and Telegram. If you're a developer, you might find it better to join our Discord. Our Discord's where all the developers talk to each other, where they help each other, where they share information. Discord has a bit more of a developer focus. So there's all three of those. Whatever you like, whatever you need, you'll find at the bottom of the website.
Okay, great. Now, one last thing before we go. You guys reached. Damn it! All right. So, one more thing before we go. You guys recently had a rebranding. What was the reasoning or idea behind the rebranding? And what is the future of SubQuery? Damn it. I'm so sorry, bro. This is the worst part. The ending is always the hardest. All right. So, one last thing to close out the interview. This week, you guys recently had a rebranding. What was the reasoning behind the rebranding? And what is your vision for SubQuery in the future?
You're correct. We just we haven't changed much. We just changed our logo. We changed the color scheme. We thought we needed a refresh after 4 years, and we really wanted to kind of dive into the dark mode. I know you might have seen a lot of dark mode stuff around the internet, but it's better for developers. And we really like the kind of freshness. So the rebrand has a lot more like neon flowers. I guess you could best describe it as. Hopefully, you think it's quite cool. But what's next for us? We are trying to become more than just a data indexer. We're trying to become decentralized infrastructure. We're looking at any other verticals, any other tools out there that developers need every time they build. And we're working on how we can decentralize that tool to make it better for developers. Okay. So we're constantly on the dream. Our kind of overriding mission is to allow developers in Web3 to build without any centralization, and to provide a service that allows them to decentralize their entire application without any issue.
This has been Decentralized Data on Demand with James Bailey. Thank you for being here, brother.
Thanks for having me, Joshua.
The Crypto News Podcast with your host, Joshua Roomsberg. Follow and subscribe today.